everybody. Thank you for joining. Welcome to our 11th and final town hall of the primary campaign. Thanks to all of our viewers listening and watching. I hope to meet your expectations and to earn your vote. You will ask the questions tonight, and I'll do my best to answer them. It's been my pleasure throughout this campaign to join with viewers the last 3 months on these remote town halls. It's not the same as being there live, but I think we do a good job of answering people's questions and doing the best possible way of communicating with people in this coronavirus pandemic. Having said that, let's start. The stakes for this election, which is on Tuesday, are high. We're a nation at its tipping point. People are protesting and demanding change. The coronavirus pandemic has laid open our wounds, and it's time as a nation that we heal them. Economic, racial, and healthcare injustice, it's all part of the problem that we must fix. And to do so, we need a uniter and not a divider. I get asked the question all the time, why is 2020 different than 2018? It starts with Lee Zeldin himself. Zeldin is wrapped around Donald Trump more so now than ever before. And he's become more hyper-partisan at the expense of the people who live here on Long Island. Zeldin is blind to Trump's inaction on COVID, and he's completely oblivious to the protests going on throughout this district demanding change. Twice, Lee Zeldin voted not to repeal the SALT cap. That single bill is the most damaging thing to people on Long Island and in our great state. And Zeldin is not there defending us, and we must make him pay for those votes. Zeldin voted against prescription drug pricing reform in December. Again, he's not here for us, and it's time we make him pay. And then most recently, Zeldin voted against the HEROES Act. When doing that, he rejected repeal of the SALT cap one more time, but equally, if not more important, he rejected $49 billion to states and billions more to local governments who are desperately in need. And we've been fighting the coronavirus here in New York. We've lost our tax revenues because we're doing it, and our costs are high because the federal government has not given us the support we need. We are not going to be able to pay for our services unless we get help from Washington. And Lee Zeldin is the congressman representing this district. His failure to vote for us should be reason alone to disqualify him for the job going forward. Lee Zeldin ghosts his constituents. He never meets with them, and he never holds himself accountable. That's not the congressman I'm going to be. For 3 years, I've been crisscrossing the district, and I've proved just the man that I will be representing you, attending fire department barbecues, outdoor festivals, to meet with voters, talk to them, listen to them, and build relationships. And now I'm here out there demonstrating with people for change. I've been to nine Black Lives Matter demonstrations demanding racial justice. And I'm so proud to be doing it because the time is now for change in Long Island and elsewhere in this country. Last September, I started holding monthly town halls. I'm never afraid to go to Republican strongholds like Shirley and Kings Park and Riverhead. When coronavirus hit, we moved to a virtual format, and we're now holding our 11th town hall in total, the 5th event that we've done online and virtually. I'm the only candidate in this race who's engaging with voters on a constant basis. I know this district, I know its people, and I know what they want in their representative. They want someone who will fight for them and be their leader. They want someone who can think independently. And that's exactly what I'm going to be when I'm in Congress as your representative. So we're about to start. Here are some ground rules. We received many questions in advance by email. We're going to start with a few of those just so that we can get started. But we want to hear from you, our viewers and attendees. We want you to take part, so please be submitting your questions as we go along. You may do it in the chat function, or you may email questions to campaign@perrygershon.com. That's campaign@perrygershon.com. Or you may submit them on Twitter or on Facebook Live. And we're looking and monitoring all the channels. So with that, Hannah, my campaign manager, is going to be taking your questions and reading it to me. Hannah, why don't you start? Take it away.
Okay. Before we get started, though, I just want to let everyone know that we've got over 90 people watching between Zoom and Facebook. So thanks, everyone, for jumping on. Okay. So this first question is from Kim from Middle Island. What are your thoughts about special needs adults that live in group homes that have not been able to visit families for 3 months due to COVID?
The situation in and of itself is horrible. I mean, we do need to take special care of our special needs people. And we've designed services here on Long Island to take care of them. But COVID came along and all visitation stopped because of fears with the contagiousness of the disease. And we're now starting to relax the standards. And Governor Cuomo today announced that we'd be allowing visitation of people in hospitals. I don't know for sure, and we can follow up in terms of group homes and special needs people. I imagine that the similar visitation rights would go with that and privileges, but I haven't confirmed it. So I think we have to we have to be sure. It's a mixed bag because we need to be safe and we need to protect people. And the worst thing that could happen would be for someone who's carrying coronavirus to introduce it into a group home while they're visiting. On the other hand, it's not right for the person who's living there, the special needs person, to be cut off. So we need to find the right middle ground that balances safety and visitation. And again, it goes to the theme that I say all the time, and I posted about it on Facebook this morning. We need to make testing so freely available for free that everyone can be tested so that we don't have to worry that the person visiting the group home might be carrying COVID. The more we can do to identify cases of COVID in advance, the more sure we'll be that we're not introducing it into populations where it could be much more deadly than the general public. But thank you for the question, Kim.
This next question is from John. He asked it on Zoom. John asks, the Wall Street Journal has reported that up to 40% of Black-owned businesses have closed, many of them permanently. How can we bring them back?
John, thank you for the question. It's a very good one, especially with everything that's going on. I think people are paying more attention than they have in the past. Minority communities in particular were hurt much worse by COVID. And that's a reality that we can't escape from. We need to be cognizant of it going forward and make sure that our healthcare treats all communities more equally. Access to healthcare has become a real issue, and COVID's accentuated that. But as businesses have closed down, we can't just assume they're going to reopen. So I think we're going to, if we do it right, we should be providing financial incentives to relaunch businesses in communities that were hurt the most by COVID. It does not have to be targeted specifically for minority communities for it to wind up there, because the communities that were hurt are the ones that deserve the most help in getting started up. And what we're going to see as we get COVID under better control, probably going into next year in the next Congress, is a need to really reinvest in public works programs. And those include infrastructure investment, but it also includes starting up, restarting up minority-run businesses in neighborhoods that they service. And we can't replace exactly the businesses that were lost, but we need to find a way to rebuild similar businesses so that we can go forward.
Okay, this question comes in from Facebook, from Thomas. He says, "Good evening. Thank you for addressing potential Democratic primary voters. If you're taking questions, which we are, without saying anything unkind about your opponents, can you tell us what differentiates you from them as a candidate?" Thomas on Facebook.
Thomas, thank you for the question. I'm happy that was asked. I was hoping somebody would. I have been campaigning for this seat and meeting people and interacting throughout this district for 3 years now, and nobody else can say that. I've had more personal interactions with people in all the different nooks and crannies of this district, and that makes me the strongest candidate. In order to beat Lee Zeldin, we need to duplicate what I did in terms of Democratic turnout in the election this year. But we also need to bring some of the voters who voted for Donald Trump to our side. The reality is Trump won this district by 12 points in 2016. And if some of his voters don't vote for us, we won't win it this time. So how do we do that? Personal comfort and interaction. I've been holding town halls since last September. We've been meeting with hundreds of people a month through the town hall format. And it's a way of really building the level of comfort that we can do this. And none of the other candidates in this race are holding monthly town halls, regular online town halls. And we have, Hannah said, over 90 people on this call right now. And that's great. That shows the interest that we have in the campaign. On Saturday, we had a campaign rally to get out the vote, and we had over 100 people participating on a sunny day at 11 o'clock. And that interest in the campaign is what distinguishes us. I have a great understanding of national issues. I've demonstrated that. I'm a strong progressive. I care about healthcare. But I believe firmly that healthcare is a right and not a privilege. I want to take care of our environment. I care about our water quality, getting nitrogen out of the soil and out of the bays, and protecting ourselves from climate change so that we can live on Long Island 50 years into the future and not have it taken away from us because the world is changing and the sea level is rising. And I want to make sure we have an economy that works for everybody, so young people and older people alike are not forced to move away. We need to respond to climate change. We need to respond to COVID, and we need to rebuild our economy in a green way. And I know we can do it. And that's what I stand for. And I stand for racial justice in America too. It's time. People are rising up and taking a stand. I've been to 9 demonstrations throughout this district in all parts, in the western part, in the eastern part where I live. And people are really turning out, especially young people, and demanding change and speaking up for racial justice. And that cause is just so important. And I'm making it an issue. And I hope our other challengers in the primary will do so. But I know I'm doing it to the greatest level possible. So I hope that's a good answer for you. And let's move on to the next question. Thank you, Hannah.
So this next question is from Tom on Zoom. He asks, what are your views that Long Island is pretty much still in a lockdown status with some openings, and yet protesters are gathering without masks and no PPE? If they can gather, why can't everyone else?
I'm sorry, who was the question from?
Tom.
Tom, thank you for the question. Let me correct one thing, and then I'll address what you're talking about. I've been to 9 protests. I would say 99% of the people at those protests are wearing masks. I have concerns about how close they're getting to one another. They're certainly not following the social distancing rules that they should be, and it is a concern. but they are wearing masks, and that's at least the right first step. We need to reopen our economy. We need to get things moving again, nationally and here on Long Island. But we have to do it in the safest manner possible and do everything we can not to spread the disease. I take direction from our governor, who says that the protests are fine, but if you participate in the protest, you should get tested. Well, I've been to 9 protests, and I'm going to be tested on Friday. I need to do it because it's so important, because I'm going to go to other protests, and I don't want to infect other people. And I hope others who are attending these functions look at it the same way. The more contact you have, the more important it is to be tested so that you don't spread the disease. Keep the masks on, because if you don't keep the masks on, you put people at risk. Be cognizant of coronavirus. I'd love to tell people we can forget it, everything's okay. The president says that, but the president is doing the wrong thing. I'll mention something that happened at the Hampton Bays protests I was at on Sunday. A bunch of people came over to me and wanted to say hello, wanted to shake my hand. I stuck up my elbow and said, look, it's not the right image to shake people's hands. Even if I know you're safe, you're not sick, and I'm not sick, and we have hand sanitizer here, it sets the wrong example for others. We can't be shaking hands in the environment that we're in. We need to take steps to prevent the transmission of coronavirus.
All right, this next question is from somebody who sent it in on the campaign email account. His name is John. John says, I am a United States Marine Corps veteran and a Local 3 union electrician. My questions to you are, with the 22 veterans per day taking their lives every day on average, what is your plan to helping the veteran community? We'll start with that one. He has 2 other questions.
Okay, John, thank you for the question. And we do have to take care of our veterans in this district. We have so many of them, and it starts with taking care of people's mental health. We need to acknowledge that mental health is a critical concern for our veterans. And they go abroad, do a service for our country. We owe it to them to ease their transition back here and to help them find jobs and to help them adjust to life here. And if they have a traumatic experience, we should be on top of it before it overtakes their ability to function, reintegrating into our society. And I think we fall short there as a country right now, and we need to take better steps to improve how we do it. It's not okay to say homeless veterans, to show concern only for veterans when they become homeless. We need to watch the steps ahead of time to help the transition so that we don't see veterans becoming homeless. We need to take care of them up front. I hope that helps. Hannah, is there another part to it that I can try to address?
They were separate issues, not related to veterans, so I'll come back to them.
Okay, why don't you go on to the next question then?
Okay. This one is from Steve over Zoom. Steve says, with respect to local issues, what would you do that Zeldin has not with respect to dredging harbors and inlets, traffic congestion on the North Fork, water runoff, pollution, and protecting our bays and estuaries?
Okay. Steve, this questions from Steve?
Yeah.
Steve, hi. Thank you for the question. There's a lot there to unpack, and so I may go back to Hannah to remind me of what the pieces of it were. In terms of traffic on the North Fork, it's a real concern, as is traffic everywhere. I have seen Zeldin advocate for building a bridge or tunnel across to Connecticut, to the other side, or to Westchester. That is, in my opinion, a very bad idea because it will lead to further traffic and congestion in the North Fork. I think we need to be cognizant of where we are and be careful with the transition. The North Fork is becoming more developed as the South Fork did many years ago. And we need to make sure that we don't overwhelm the people who are there living on the North Fork today. In terms of water and nitrogen and protecting our bays, we need to do a better job than we're doing today. It starts with sewers and clean septic systems. And I can say that the county has a great program to help people install clean septic on their properties, where the county provided grants to contractors, and the contractors would install these clean septic systems, and it was designed to be tax-free to the homeowner who was putting them in, because he was never touching any of the money. A problem came up because in the county executive's race, the controller, Kennedy, suggested that perhaps these payments should be taxable to homeowners. And he raised the issue with the IRS. The outcome of this is that the IRS started issuing 1099s to homeowners for income they never touched. Well, that's not right, and we've got to fix it. And Congressman Zeldin has not taken a stand on it. Again, he's not standing up for the people who live here because his first loyalty is to Donald Trump, not to his constituents. And we need to do better. If elected, I can't promise you I will do better. Tom Suozzi and Peter King signed this letter. Lee Zeldin should have, and he didn't. We need to demand the IRS not issue 1099s. They're essentially double taxing on the same income. What was the first part of the question, Hannah?
Let me scroll back up to it, sorry. So the first part of the question was, what would you do that Zeldin has not with respect to dredging harbors and inlets, traffic congestion? So dredging harbors and inlets, traffic congestion on the North Fork, water runoff, pollution, protecting our bays and harbors. That's
I've talked about some of it, but in terms of dredging, the Army Corps of Engineers has been doing dredging as piecemeal effects to deal with where our flow of water has changed over time with climate change. Dredging is a short-term solution that is necessary at times. I mean, you've got Montauk Highway and other roads that get overrun with sand and water. We have problems with that are immediate, that need to be addressed. So short-term dredging is a solution. However, long-term dredging isn't the answer. Fighting climate change is the answer. We need to do a much better job of getting off of fossil fuels and getting onto cleaner forms of energy. I think we can do that in the part of a national infrastructure bill. We can be investing in clean energy, bringing money into this district and bringing better paying jobs with it. Jobs that pay $40 an hour as opposed to the $15 an hour jobs that we lost as part of this clean energy infrastructure program. So that's the focus I'd like to see us take.
Okay, so this next question comes in from Facebook, from Chris. Chris is asking, what is your position on Citizens United? Also, will you or have you taken a pledge not to take corporate PAC or billionaire donations?
Chris, thank you for the question. I have taken a pledge not to take corporate PAC money, and our campaign has not taken any corporate PAC money, and some has been offered to me. I think that pledge is important because you want to elect a representative who's there to represent the people as opposed to corporate donors and corporate interests. Lee Zeldin takes a lot of money from the pharmaceutical industry, and as a result, he voted against prescription drug pricing reform. Lee Zeldin takes a lot of money from the NRA, and he votes consistently against gun safety regulation. So you have to look at where your money is coming from and then see who you're representing. Citizens United is a bigger issue. Citizens United deals with dark money that comes in on top of regular interest money. A donor can give unlimited amounts of money to a PAC, and it can do it darkly through LLCs so that you may never know who the real PAC donors are. We need to take that kind of money out of politics. We need to do it as quickly as possible. However, as long as we have PACs, super PACs funding, we have to play by the same rules that everybody else does. In the last election, in the last week, Lee Zeldin got $500,000 from Trump's super PAC. I'd like to think that in our election this year, we'll have Democratic PAC money that can compete, allow us to compete with Zeldin's PAC money. Because if we don't, it gives him an unfair advantage. Longer term, we've got to elect Democrats into office so that we can abolish the Citizens United decision, so we can pass legislation that will say that the super PACs can't have the influence that they do today. And I'm absolutely committed to campaign finance reform. I was endorsed 2 years ago by the End Citizens United PAC. And again, you have a PAC standing up for campaign reform. So it's critical that we reform our election laws so that we can get big money out of politics. And I stand very, very firmly there. I frequently get asked the question at candidate forums, what's the first piece of legislation you'd like to see passed if you're in Congress? And I answer campaign finance reform, because in order to accomplish all the great things I want to do as your representative, we've got to get big money out of politics first, or we'll never get there.
This next question is from Bill on Zoom. Bill asks, what can be done about equalizing the imbalance of federal taxation and spending where New Yorkers pay billions more in the federal treasury than we receive? And for instance, Kentuckians receive billions more than they pay. Reinstating the SALT deduction is a good start, but it seems like there should be more that we can do.
Bill, that's a great question too, and you answered it in part. And we do need to reinstate the entire SALT deduction. And just for people who don't understand the issue, until 2017, when the Republicans passed their tax plan, residents of a state with high taxes could fully deduct the state and local taxes that they pay, and that's state income tax, local income tax, and property tax. You could deduct what you pay to the state and locality against your federal income tax. And in this district, the median state and local tax that people deducted was $17,000. The Republicans passed a plan, a new tax law, that put a $10,000 cap on it. So $7,000 of deductions to the median taxpayer were lost in this district. We need to get that back, because that is taking money from big states and sending it to the small states that are already receiving more money. We also need to change the balance or imbalance the other way to bring more money back to the big states to help us recover from COVID. We've had the worst damage. New York, California, the big states, and we've got to bring money back to them in order for us to exist in the future. And that's got to be part of what the federal government does. We're all in this together. We're the United States of America, and we've got to better distribute the sources of income and the uses of income that come into the federal government.
Okay, we're going to go back to John from his email earlier. John, who is with Local 3 as a union electrician. John did have a question about, I'll throw in both questions. He says, what is your plan on helping New Yorkers get back SALT deductions? And then what is your view on organized labor? And what will you do to prevailing wage and union jobs?
Okay, John, thank you for that question too. In terms of the SALT deduction, I think we're getting close. The House passed a bill that would give us back our SALT deduction. They've done it twice. They did it in December, and they did it again as part of the HEROES Act. Lee Zeldin voted against it, but it still passed the House. So we've got to get this bill through the Senate and get a president who will sign it. The November election is our chance to accomplish both of those things. We've got to get Mitch McConnell out of his leadership role in the Senate. We've got to win enough states so that Mitch McConnell is no longer leader of the Senate. And then we can get this legislation in front of the Senate that's already passed the House. And if we elect Joe Biden, that's the other step to getting it done. And it's got to be a priority. We can't stop talking about it, because as soon as we relax the pressure for getting it done, people will forget the need to do it. I'm sorry, what was the other part of that?
So it was two
union.
questions, really.
Yeah.
Unions, yeah, prevailing wage.
I am extremely pro-union. I'm endorsed by PEF and by the UAW in my primary campaign. And in my last general election campaign, I was endorsed by the Long Island Fed and the AFL-CIO and a host of other unions locally and nationally. I see unions as critical to the middle class in America. One of the questions that comes up in forums is, how do you rebuild the middle class? And I'd say, well, let's rebuild our union movement. Let's protect them. Prevailing wage is important, but we need to do more than just prevailing wage. We need to undo a lot of the steps that the courts have taken to make it harder for people to organize. Our organized labor is the spokesman, again, for the middle class. And without it, labor loses its bargaining rights. And we can't forget that. And we've got to fight for labor every single day. And I promise you, I will do that as your representative.
This next question is from Ken from Miller Place. He is asking it on Zoom. He says, another candidate in this race says she is a scientist. Well, isn't science and medicine in your DNA, re your mother and father?
Ken, thank you for that question. I couldn't have said it better myself. For those who don't know about me, I graduated Yale in 1984, and I was a molecular biochemistry and biophysics major. And actually, back in the day, I published 3 scientific papers based on stuff that I had done undergraduate and after college on my way to medical school. I went to Columbia Medical School for 2.5 years and realized somewhere along the way that I was following in my parents' footsteps and not guiding my own trail. And I needed to walk away what was initially for as a leave of absence to reevaluate, and then finding my own path. I opened a sports bar in Manhattan in 1987. It was one of the first sports bars in the country. It was very, very successful. And then I went on to business school at Berkeley and came back to have a career in commercial real estate finance. But I haven't forgotten the science. It's still a part of me. Both of my parents are medical researchers. My mom developed the chickenpox vaccine and is one of the country's experts still on both vaccination and chickenpox. My aunt is a public health expert. She's been on these video town halls with me, virtual town halls with me twice. And my brother is a MD, PhD researcher at University of North Carolina. So it's in the DNA, and I have access to many, many medical experts who I turn to and get their point of view on issues, some that relate directly to science and some that relate indirectly to science, because it is the right approach. It disturbs me to no end that our government today and our administration is filled with science deniers, and we must fix that. But you fix that with people who have respect for science, not necessarily with scientists. Scientists are fine. I love scientists. I have no problem with them. But to have respect for science, you do not need to be a scientist. Thank you for the question, Ken.
This next question is from Annie on Zoom. Annie says, speaking of young people at protests, how do you harness this passion and anger to vote? Notoriously, they don't show up to vote. Is there a particular issue that can get them to the ballot box?
Annie, that is a great question. And if I had the secret sauce, I could guarantee you the election of Democrats for a whole long time. I'm encouraged, though, by what I'm seeing. And I go back to the demonstration I was at in Hampton Bays on Sunday. The speaker, when he was done making his point about Black Lives Matter, he said, now, if you want to effectuate change, you've got to vote. And there was a voting registration table, and people were pushing it. If the primary had been over, I think you would have seen me, because I would have felt less conflicted out there making sure people register to vote. We've got to use every opportunity where young people gather to get them to register and to understand the importance of participation. And as I said, I'm encouraged by the number of people who are turning out. As long as we keep them engaged, I think they're going to vote. And this current president has disturbed people to such a level that I believe Americans are ready to vote in droves to get rid of him. And it became clear through the impeachment hearings that the only recourse, if you don't like Donald Trump, is to vote him out. And we're going to see in November that people get it. I fully believe that. And I think young people are going to be a driving force to it.
This next question is from Michelle on Zoom. She says, small businesses are having difficulty in writing their safety plan and paying for upgrades to their businesses. What do you think should be done? I think this is in regards to reopening the economy and reopening businesses.
Okay, it's from Michelle?
Yes.
Hi, Michelle, thank you for the question. We need to take care of our small businesses. They're an engine of our economy. More so in many ways than our big businesses. They need more help. We had the PPP program as a way to try to keep small businesses afloat. And unfortunately, access to it was not what it should have been. And many businesses got PPP money that probably shouldn't have. The government has promised us an accounting of it. It was part of the legislation that passed and was signed, but Steve Mnuchin isn't providing it despite his legal obligation to do so, which again is another reason why we need to make a change. But blaming Steve Mnuchin isn't the answer. The question is, how do we help small businesses? And we're going to need to invest in them and provide incentives for them as the economy recovers. It's a long process going forward of how we bring everything back together and get things ticking again. You don't snap your fingers and make it work overnight. Lee Zeldin had an interesting tweet this morning bragging about the retail sales numbers and saying the country's engine is moving again. Well, that's an illusion. It's not. It's moving better than it was a month before because we've reopened some businesses and people can go out. But there are so many Americans who've lost their jobs, who are still losing their jobs, whose businesses are closing, and we are going to need to take care of them and make sure they have a path going forward so they can get back to the shape that they were in before coronavirus hit. It won't happen overnight. It won't happen automatically. That's why we need to elect Democrats into office to get control of the presidency and the Senate so that we can pass legislation and take care of our small businesses.
Okay, this next question is from Kenneth. As you support getting off fossil fuels, what can we do to reduce the cost of electricity to support electric automobiles and other forms of clean energy here on Long Island, where electric rates are some of the highest in the nation?
There are a lot of things we can do to help getting us off fossil fuels and onto cleaner energy. We can build more wind farms to generate cheaper electric power here. We can build more and install more solar panels so that more homes are able to generate cheaper solar power and not rely on natural gas and other sources of generating electric power. We should be mandating that every new home that is able to put on solar panels, put on solar panels. And I guess exceptions would be homes in the woods that have trees that shield off your roof so that you don't see the sun. But that's the minority of houses. There's no reason a house should be built today that doesn't have solar panels if it has access to the sun. And California is taking the lead on that. We should be doing that here on Long Island as well. We should be creating incentives for people to get electric cars. I personally drive a Chevrolet Volt. I've driven 71,000 miles in conjunction with this campaign. And it would be a lot more, but for coronavirus. And I'm proud of the fact that I have a hybrid car and rely on electric power to do that. I had an incentive from the government to buy that car, and Trump is letting those incentives go away. We need to put those incentives back into the law so that people buy electric cars. That reduces our fossil fuel dependence. We need to put money into research and development so that we have better ways and cheaper ways of generating clean power. Stony Brook in this district is a major development center. We should be sending more research dollars to Stony Brook. If we could develop better battery technology, we could better harness the sun's power and make better use of the solar that we have now. Right now, we're limited because the sun's not always shining. But if we could capture more of the sun's power while the sun is out and store it in better battery technology, clean power would go a lot further. So those are the ideas, and I'd like to see, as a congressman, I'd like to be able to implement it with federal dollars. And it's a big priority for me, something I talk about all the time. Thank you for the question, Kenneth.
This next question is from Nicole in Port Jefferson. If we see a second wave of COVID, how do you propose we protect prison populations on Long Island and everywhere? From Nicole.
Nicole, your question is good, but it's applicable even before a second wave of coronavirus. If I was reading this morning, I think, that prisons are now being impacted the hardest. I think they're replacing meatpacking facilities as a center of coronavirus outbreaks. We need to do a better job of testing as a way of controlling the spreading of the disease. There's no other answer to it. The answer isn't get rid of prisons. We need to keep our people who commit crime shouldn't be released back into the population. I think Lee Zeldin would like to say Democrats stand for that. We don't. But we also need to make sure that we take care of people who are in group facilities like prisons and ward them off from the disease and test the populations within the prisons. So if someone does get sick, we don't keep them out exposed to the rest of the population, so we spread the disease. Testing is the way we fix it, or we control it. It's not a fix. The fix is a vaccine, and we can't forget that. But testing is a way of minimizing the damage. And we've just got to do better with testing. And I can't say that enough. If I say it 10 more times in the rest of this town hall, I probably have not said the word testing enough. It is the only thing we can do to get through this pandemic. And it kills me that the president refuses to acknowledge it.
This question was pre-submitted. How do you differ from Zeldin on the protests?
Who's the question from?
Jacob, sorry.
Jacob, thank you for that question. I was hoping someone would ask that. Lee Zeldin has an interesting view on the protests. He's only said that protests are violent, and he condemns the violence that's going on. He has yet to acknowledge that there even are peaceful protests going on in his own district. Not once has he referenced the peaceful demonstrations or called on the need for change. He goes to such great length to protect his relationships with the police department, which I'd like to have too. There are most policemen are here to protect us and are doing the right thing. But you can't close your eyes to the fact that bad things have happened and we are not delivering equal racial justice in America. We've got to do better. That's how we improve ourselves as Americans. I believe it. Lee Zeldin is blind to it, intentionally. And we've got to just call him out for it. Thank you for the question.
Okay, this next question came in on our campaign email from Susan. What are your thoughts on people from New York City sitting out the pandemic out east? I think out East End, east.
Susan, I think you hit the nail on the head with something that's happening that we've all got to adjust to. If you're on the South Fork or if you're on the North Fork, there's suddenly more people living in your community. And I think they're going to be around for a while. We used to coexist with them where people had summer homes and they were here for a limited number of months. These second homeowners are now spending more time out on the East End, on the North Fork and on the South Fork, and they're using our services. And we're going to need to bring more money into our services to accommodate them. The summer conditions will be more than just 2 to 3 months now. But people have the right to be here. They need to respect our customs. I was very concerned when coronavirus first became an issue and people fled the city and came out here. And there was definitely an attitude among some that they left the city, the virus in the city, and they could come here without masks and without social distancing and take for granted that we didn't have virus here. That was very wrong. But I think people, for the most part, have adjusted and follow social distancing rules, wear masks, and do the right thing out here. And many of them don't plan to come back to the city anytime soon. So I think we're all going to need to coexist and accept our community just got a little bit larger for some period of time. Everybody has got to show respect. Respect is the key word. Our lives are all stressed right now. I mean, there's nothing could be more true than that coronavirus has stressed each and every individual out on Long Island and elsewhere. We're not going to return to life as it was until we have a vaccine. And so part of that adjustment is accepting that there are people from the city who used to live predominantly in the city who are going to be spending a lot more time out here. And we should work together because we're all in it together. We're all Long Island residents right now.
This question came in on Zoom from Janet. She says, how can we distribute education funds to provide equal opportunities for those who live in less affluent areas?
Janet, that too is a great question. Education is the great equalizer of American society. And unions, as I said, are the engine of the middle class, but education, and particularly public education, is the way that people can get to a level playing field. People can raise their stature and become eligible for jobs that their parents weren't able to get to through education, and to compete on a world order to a larger extent through STEM education. So we need to find ways to get equal economic educational opportunity to everybody. The minority communities should not have lesser education available to them than other communities, more affluent communities on Long Island. Part of that has got to come from the state. It's not exactly a federal issue. but the federal government provides money to the states, and we can certainly provide money to help level the playing field and bring more education dollars through grants and other programs into our minority communities. And I think that's, at least in part, the way to do it.
This next question is from Allison. Allison says, we voted for you in the last election. What makes you think you can beat Zeldin this time?
Allison, that is another great question. And if you go back to my introductory remarks, I pointed out that I asked the question and then tried to answer it. How is 2020 different from 2018? The point I made before is that Lee Zeldin has become even more tied to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is significantly less popular now than he was 2 years ago. That alone is going to bring Zeldin down. Zeldin has also, in my mind, disqualified himself for service to our communities with certain of his votes, voting against elimination of the SALT cap. There's no excuse for that when you represent Long Island. Voting against prescription drug pricing reductions. There's no excuse for that when you're representing people who are struggling to get by today with their healthcare costs. Voting against the HEROES Act, denying money to the state and local governments, essentially going with Mitch McConnell's go bankrupt New York attitude. And whether Zeldin has said that or not, his votes show what his true actions. And we've got to hold him accountable for his votes. And I can name a host of others. And through this campaign, we will bring up Zeldin's voting record. But the other thing that's different is me. I've been through a round with Zeldin before. I've had the experience as a campaigner from the last election. And I think in fact, I know I do a better job now. We didn't do these town halls 2 years ago. We've had 2 years of outreach to people all over this district. And that makes me a far superior candidate than I was 2 years ago. I am in this to win. We were very close before. This time, I know we're going to get it done.
Okay, so this next question is from Dalen in Mattituck. How safe is the mail-in process? Should we worry about people voting multiple times in the mail?
Dalen, that too is a great question, and it will allow me to say a few things that I told people by email and on the phone today as I was making calls, introducing myself to voters. The mail-in process as it's set up has a lot of pluses and some minuses. And the good thing is that everybody got a form to request a ballot, and everyone who requested a ballot is getting a ballot so they can vote mail-in. We will have greater turnout this time than we did in the primary 2 years ago. We've already gotten, last count I heard was 40,000 absentee ballot requests in this district. We only had 24,000 or so votes in the primary 2 years ago. So, and those mail-in ballots don't count the election day turnout. But the way we protect ourselves from fraud is none of the mail-in votes, absentee votes, will be counted until a week or 8 days. I forget, and I apologize for not knowing whether that technicality, whether it's 7 or 8 days after the election. But whenever that date is when they start counting them. They want to make sure they're all in before the counting starts, and no absentee vote will count for a person who's voted already. So all of the regular in-person votes are tabulated, and then the absentee ballots start to be counted, and any ballot that for a person who voted in person, the absentee ballot is thrown out. So you cannot vote twice. And that's how you protect the security of the absentee ballot process.
Okay, this next question is from David from Patchogue.
Hold on, let me just add one more thing to that. What I tell people, and I'm going to say it on this call too, is if you want to vote in person, you should vote absentee as well, because you can't be double counted. It's a way of ensuring that your vote will be counted. If for whatever reason you're unable to get to the polls on election day, and there will be a reduced number of polling places, vote absentee. And then if you can vote in person too, great. Your vote in person is the one that counts. So thank you. Go on with the next question, please.
Okay. So this is David from Patchogue. He asks, do you believe in coastal retreat to fight climate change?
David, that too is a great question. And it makes me think back to the League of Conservation Voters forum with me and Lee Zeldin in the last campaign. Zeldin and I were both asked that question. And Zeldin was making the point that you can solve climate change by building seawalls and preventing water from overtaking us. And that was his way of dealing with rising coastlines. And I answered, or retorted, that doesn't work. I mean, seawalls are a stopgap solution. But if water levels are rising, they're going to overtake the seawalls and ultimately cause massive damage to your coastal communities. So you're either going to need to stop climate change by getting us off fossil fuels, or accept that we're going to need to retreat. You can't fight Mother Nature. It doesn't work. As water levels rise, you're going to need to move structures back away from the water. People may be misrepresenting what I said, but I was pretty clear. And at the end of that forum, the League of Conservation Voters endorsed me in 2018. So I know my position is the environmentally sound one.
All right, this next question is from Jane, Jane in Poquat. She asks, Zeldin said today the economy is bouncing back. Do you believe him?
Jane, thank you for that question. I tried to allude to his tweet earlier today on that as well. Back from what? Is it bouncing back from where it was in the absolute doldrums where everything was shut down? Yes, we're doing better than we were then. Are we anywhere close to where we were before COVID? Absolutely not. And we're not going to get there. One, we're not going to get there with coronavirus still rampant in our society. And we need a vaccine to stop it and eradicate it. We need testing to control it. And we don't have a vaccine and we don't have adequate testing just yet. But assuming we have all that, we still need to be investing money in infrastructure to create new jobs. The economy is super stressed right now. Our small businesses need to be jump-started. We need to put people back to work, and they won't just go back to work overnight. It's a lot easier to take away a job than it is to replace it. And you're fooling yourself, and Zeldin's trying to fool some smart people here on Long Island by telling them the economy is bouncing back without any help. It only comes back if we help it. And I know our voters are smarter than that, and that's why Lee Zeldin's not going to get reelected.
Okay, so this question is from Gemma on the campaign email. Gemma asks, what do you think about police reform bills in the House and Senate?
Jenna, thank Jenna or Gemma?
With an M like mom. Gemma.
Sorry about that. Gemma, thank you for that question. I think the House bill is absolutely the best way to go. And it wasn't all that complicated. It shouldn't be so controversial. A ban on chokeholds, who's going to take the other side of that? And anti-lynching rules, again, who's going to take the other side of that? Mandating training and for our police forces, why would you take the other side of that? And these are simple steps forward that are long overdue. The Senate is going to offer less, and the president, who knows if he's going to get behind it. And the one thing I can tell you for sure about Donald Trump is that you can't believe what he says from day to day. He will change it, and he will use whatever he's saying to suit his own agenda. which isn't the agenda of the people here on Long Island or in America. Donald Trump's agenda is Donald Trump, and he demonstrates that time and time again. The Senate and the House, maybe they'll get something done together, but I certainly haven't heard Mitch McConnell say he's committed to it. So realistically speaking, you want my opinion, we're going to need to wait till we get past Election Day and have a new Congress with new people in leadership in order to get the reforms that we need accomplished. And we cannot let down our commitment to social justice and demands for change. And you look at what happened in Atlanta over the weekend, and we have so much further to go. I am proud of some of what these protests and demonstrations have accomplished. New York overturned Rule 50A last week, and we now will have better transparency in our policing here locally. That's a step in the right direction, and it came out only because people are demonstrating. So let's keep it up. Let's keep the pressure on, and we've got to elect Democrats in November. It's now 8:05. Why don't we do like 2 or 3 more questions and then wrap it up?
Okay, cool. This question's from Mike, and he says, what will we do in the fall with our kids in school and COVID on the rise?
Mike, that too is a wonderful question. I don't have a perfect answer. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'll give you the best thoughts that I have. We need to get our kids back in school. Education over the internet is helpful. It's certainly better than nothing, but it's not a substitute for real life interaction between a student and his teacher or a student and another student. So we must find a way to get people back into the classroom. And our teachers desperately want to be resuming their in-person careers teaching. But we have to do it as safely as possible, which again, I'm going to use that word again, testing is the way to do it. We need to make sure we're able to test and identify people who get sick and bring it into the classroom as quickly as possible and shut down outbreaks before they spread too deeply into the population. The sooner we do that, the better. That should be the path forward, and it will be a balancing act. I hope we can keep our kids in school. I read today that Beijing, China, just shut down their classrooms again because the virus came back. And that's an indicator, unfortunately, for what may happen here. And we need to be prepared for it. But if we don't try, we can't succeed. So I'm all for making the effort.
Next question is from Sean. How do we deal with people not wearing masks outside?
Sean, again, great question. We can tell them when we see them they should put a mask on. We can ask our law enforcement officials to enforce the rules of wherever we are. I know where I live in East Hampton, there's a law that says you must wear a mask in public. And I'll tell you, most people I encounter do wear masks. I've been to other parts of the district where I've seen people walking around without masks on, and it concerned me. I kept the distance from them myself. The problem is that as long as the head of the country, the chief executive, flaunts that he doesn't wear a mask, it's very hard to expect other people to follow public health instructions. Again, that's why I didn't want to shake people's hands in public, because as a leader or a would-be leader, you've got to set the right example for others. And that is what Zeldin isn't doing.
Okay, this is the last question, since you said we wanted to wrap it up. I think it's a good one to end with. Jeff says on Zoom, people are so divided on the island and in the country at large. How do we come together? It's from Jeff.
Jeff, that is a great concluding question, and I thank you for it. I decided to run for office because I was dissatisfied with the direction our country was taking. It was the election of Trump that inspired me to run, but I look at Trump not as the problem, but as a symptom of the problem. Americans have lost confidence in their leaders, and we're looking for any alternative to what they had, and Trump seemed to promise solutions. What we got instead is a leader who thrives on division. Right? Donald Trump gets ahead in this country by dividing other people against one another. And that is not the leader that I want to be. I see America's best path forward as one that remembers we're red, white, and blue. We are the United States of America. And blue and red, Democrats and Republicans must work together if we're going to have a path forward. I'd like to see Democrats elected in Congress, but I'd also like to see us find ways to work with people on the other side of the aisle to get policy accomplished so that one day Democrats will not control the government and Republicans will, and we're all going to have to work together. So let's set the right example and do things the right way. And I hope to God that the Republicans, after they get trounced in November, see the error of their ways and form an opposition party that wants to work with the other side and work for a common agenda instead of one that turns its back on Democrats and says, we won't work with you, our goal is to replace you. That's what happened to Obama's agenda. And we have to hope and pray that doesn't happen again. And I believe in progress. I believe in this country. I believe the majority of Americans want this to be a better place. And we want to find a way to cohabitate and work together. There are Republicans who want no part of Donald Trump. And I think we're going to see that in this election. And that's going to be the impetus for Americans coming together as a society. And I really do believe that. That's why I'm running for office. I want to be a part of that change and see this country move forward. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you for the questions. Hannah, I appreciate everything that you've done in putting this together. To our listeners tonight, thank you for joining us. It's been great. We've done 11 of these town halls leading up to the primary. I promise we're going to do a whole lot more between the primary and November once I'm the nominee. I don't know how frequently, maybe twice a month, but we've got to keep these going because it's our best way of reaching voters and communicating our message. There is no substitute for personal contact. And we've tried through these virtual town halls to do the best job we can. Thank you to everybody for being here. I believe we're going to be better. I believe in the future, in a brighter one, and one that does not have Donald Trump at the helm of our country. It all starts by your going out and voting. Tuesday is election day. Go out and vote. Go vote before. We have early voting. We have mail-in voting. There's so many ways to do it. I hope you vote for me, but even if you vote for my opponents, go out and vote. That's your privilege as Americans. It's your right as Americans. And if you don't make the most of it, you're going to lose it. So those are my concluding remarks. Thank you. It will be my honor to serve you in Congress. Thanks for joining. Good night.